All right, hello everyone. This is Mr. Mauer again, here with another guest. This guest is a Bettendorf Middle School, I should just say Bettendorf alum, and I'll let her explain a little bit of who she is and what she currently does. But she has taken time out of her busy schedule to share with you some key points that you are going to want to consider as you start to shift from your idea of your slogan to the actual display of how you want to sell the message that you hope to eventually take action on. So, without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Katie Whiteman. And Katie, kind of let you introduce yourself and then kind of let you jump into your creative process and the tips and ideas that these students should take into account when they are about to embark their action and trying to appeal to the audience of the community, their students, friends, peers, and everyone else that's going to come across Bettendorf Middle School.
All right. Hey guys, my name is Katie Whiteman, as Mr. Maurer said, and I graduated from Bettendorf Middle School and then Bettendorf High School in 2011. And I went to the University of Kansas in Lawrence, Kansas for my undergrad, and I studied graphic design there. And I recently graduated last May from there, and I got a job at an advertising agency called the Martin Agency in Richmond, Virginia. And I've been working as a designer there since June. So I have a very artistic background, but I really found my passion for design in college, and I can't wait to kind of show you guys a little bit about what design is and how it's different from art, and a couple of tricks and tips that I can give you to help as you make your posters going into this next week. So I'm just going to jump right in, talk a little bit about the design process, give you guys some things to look at, maybe inspire you a little bit, and just overall, hopefully I can help. So the first thing that I always do when I'm designing a poster is I brainstorm. And so I've heard that you guys have kind of already narrowed down topics that you want to design your posters about, and you're working on slogans. And so another part of brainstorming is brainstorming what you want your poster to look like. What kind of look and feel, what kind of imagery you want. And so there are a couple of things you want to think about when you're brainstorming. One of them being is thinking about who your audience is, and who will be looking at your poster. And something as kind of a spin-off of thinking about that is what kinds of design does your audience like to look at? What do the little music covers when you listen to Spotify, what does the design look like on that? Or what do movie posters look like? Or walking around like cool t-shirts, what do those look like? And then another thing to think about is where will people be seeing your poster? And from what I hear, it's a really, really cool location, and you kind of want to think about, will people be stopping and reading this poster? Will they be walking by really quickly? Are there any other like big posters that you might think your poster might compete with? Things like that you just want to keep in mind as you start your design process, kind of keep in the back of your mind. And so going into brainstorming, some people love it, some people hate it, but I think it's a really good thing to just like get out all your ideas, get out your good ideas, get out your bad ideas. And there are a couple ways you can do it. You can grab like tons of scratch paper and just, flip over a printout that you messed up on and use that blank side, or you can use Post-it notes or a whiteboard. And there are a couple of different things that people do sometimes. So you have this topic, they make a word list. So they write down all the different words that they can think of that have to do with that certain topic. Or some people just make like little sketches. If you think very visually like I do, they make little tiny sketches that have to do with that topic to kind of think what kind of imagery goes with that topic. And other people do mind maps. And so I'm going to show you an example of a mind map that might help you kind of think about a different way to brainstorm ideas. And so mind maps they start with, so this is one that I did on basketball. And so just a really simple topic, and I wrote in the center what my topic is, and then I kind of spiderweb off from there. So a big part of basketball is the players. And then I wrote down like, okay, basketball players are tall. They wear jerseys. They sit on a bench when they're not playing. Just really simple stuff that might be able to help you come up with different imagery for your poster that you might not have thought of if you just think of really quickly the first thing that pops into your mind when you think of that topic. Another really brief example that I did is the history of basketball. And the school that I went to is really big into basketball, and so the location was very specific for this mind map. So, dude, it was invented here in Lawrence, Kansas, and all the people that kind of had a hand in inventing basketball, and then where it can go from there. So that's an example of a mind map that you can just kind of try and generate your ideas. And also, I always forget to do this, but try and remember to document your brainstorming, especially if you're working on like a whiteboard or if you're working on a piece of paper that could easily just be forgotten. Like in your room, make sure you document it because it's really good if you're stuck to look back on those notes and all those like crazy ideas that you shot down. It might help bring back some of those really good ideas.
Yes. I'm going to interject here real quick, and I think you hit on some key points that I think are really, really important. One, the documentation that you just talked about. And I think for students, I think sometimes we forget that the things that we're addicted to, like our iPads and our phones, are the best ways to document the work that we're doing. And so, working in middle school for a while, I see kids, as well as the teachers and adults, hooked on their phones and devices, but yet we forget the powerful element it could be in terms of even education. And so, even if you're at home doodling or you're whatever you're doing, take pictures of those as Katie's talking about, because you never know when you might need that. And that's not even for just design; that's just for, I think, for anything in life. And then the other thing that you kept talking about that I think is important, you mentioned the different ways to brainstorm, and I think it's important just to reemphasize that there's not one way that's the method or the right answer. And I think sometimes we think, Katie, you're a visual person. You like to draw an art. Well, me, I'm not that way. So I would be all over the word list. It doesn't mean that one system's better than the other. And I think that's the challenge for you as students listening is find what works for you and go with it. And just because your neighbor or your friend doesn't go that way doesn't mean that it's better or worse. So just a couple things that I wanted to interject there because I think it's important that it's okay to have a voice and find your own path through this process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. And I know some of you guys are cringing because you're like, oh, I'm not artistic. I don't want to do this. Well, I will give you guys some really good tips to think outside the box so you're not just drawing on a pencil and paper. So stay tuned. So another thing that I kind of look at to get the juices going is reference. And with the internet these days, there are so many different things that you can look at in terms of great poster design examples. And just a really brief background on graphic design. It's different from art in that it's solving a problem or it has a message. And with these posters, you guys are trying to communicate something. And so that's really exciting that you have this big message and you have this voice that you're trying to get across, and it's not just a painting. Being an art person in high school, that like paintings are great and artists are so great, but being a designer, you have a message that you want to articulate. And so I'm going to show you guys a couple of historical examples of design and history so you can kind of get an example of, wow, this was a really important thing even way back when. And so, let's see here. Post-Transpiration, historical. So the iconic Uncle Sam, type and image. Let's see if I can go this way. Norman Rockwell and the messages that he had to say. Even though it was painting, he still had a big thing that he wanted to communicate. Rosie the Riveter. Smokey the Bear was really big. This was for the Vietnam War. And then even recently, this was a big graphic design thing as well. And so there are a lot of different. Oh, hi, Mr. Maurer. There are a lot of different ways and different styles you can take your poster, and I just want you guys to be aware that you have a lot of different options. It doesn't just have to be you drawing. So I'm going to show you some more reference of different types of poster design that you can maybe get inspired by. So the first one I'm going to talk about is illustrative, and this is more art focused, but there's a lot of different styles of art that you can think about. So more icon based and very simple shapes, or more pattern based. That's small. This is also kind of pattern based, but very simple artistic approach. Photography is a really cool thing that you can use, and something to keep in mind. And some more kind of simple, cute, a little humorous approach. And then there's also like just really simple, iconic. And so just using a really simple image to articulate your ideas. And a lot of these look easy, but they're actually simple poster designs are some of the most time consuming, because you have to think of a really powerful image that speaks to what you're talking about. And it can be even so simple as combining like using a microphone and flipping it on its head to create a bird cage. And what can that speak for? Another direction that you can go in is a type-based direction. But I would encourage you to not just slap like a word in Times New Roman and call it good for your poster. Think about making type out of things that you wouldn't normally make type out of, like a fish, and what can that speak? What message can you articulate that way? Or like dog hair, and this is talking about the ASPCA and how dogs need adopted, and how creating type out of dog hair can speak to a certain message. Or putting type in a shape, and what can that talk about? Or putting type as a pattern. And even something really as simple as taking type and switching the color, and how color and type together can have a big message on its own. Another type example. And I also have some really out of the box examples that that use type in a very different sort of way. There's an advertising agency called Sagmeister and Walsh that is known for making type out of crazy things. So people and type made actually out of the silhouettes of people. Bank made out of an old style calculator. Obviously, some of these are impossible, but I just want you to just see what kind of things people are doing, and how they're thinking really outside the box. And this one's made out of a bunch of pennies, and how that can speak to have a message, and says, "Obsessions make my life worse and my work better." and then it's made out of pennies, and the idea was that they're swept away at the end of the day. Let me go back here. And okay, so went through a couple of examples, you get the inspiration going, you see the reference. And so just gonna speed by because I'm probably running out of time here. So once you have like an idea in your head, you want to look at all this brainstorming that you want to do, and you kind of want to pick out the ideas that you think are really strong and are really good. And then what I normally do is I just make really small thumbnail sketches of what I want those posters to be. Do a bunch of different ones, think really quickly. Sometimes your best ideas are the ones that you drew out the fastest. And so draw them small and just make sure that you keep your ideas going. And then after you do that, you kind of want to move onto the computer or start to execute your idea in a bigger and a grander way. And so thinking about like how you're going to, like, are you going to illustrate it? Are you going to do more of an installation piece? Are you going to do maybe more of a type-based poster or do more of an icon? And then just keep doing more and more revisions until you kind of feel like you feel really good about your idea and your design. And then yeah, so just keep doing revisions. And so I have an example of a poster that I did just to kind of show you. Obviously, you guys won't do this many revisions, but just how many different poster designs I did to land on one poster design. And this was for school, and it was just a really good experience to kind of see how much work goes into one single poster. And this is kind of small, but just I had a bunch of different ideas and I didn't know exactly what kind of illustration style I wanted, if I wanted just a type-based, if I wanted a more serious tone or a more playful, fun tone. And, you know, you just have to go through those kinds of you have to go through all the cobwebs of your mind to kind of think through what is the best way to articulate my big message that I want to have. And so I hope you guys have like thought this was helpful. I have a couple of really other quick notes. Remember that poster design should be pretty simple. You don't necessarily need a ton of stuff. And your audience doesn't really want to read a book on this poster. And so just stick to your main core idea, and just make sure that you keep it simple and very focused on that big concept. Also, color is really important, and making sure that you have bold, contrasting colors. So people can see it from far away because they're gonna be interested if it's a really powerful color palette. And my last tip is I don't want you guys to make any excuses. Like, don't let yourself think that because you're not artistic, you can't be a good designer. There are so many designers I know that cannot draw worth anything. And also don't let yourself be restrained by the software that you have. Believe it or not, designers have not always had shiny computers and Adobe software to design with. And so be creative with the tools that you use. Back then they used like copy machines and they just made a ton of collages and copied it over and over and over again and made really cool poster designs. They utilized photography really well. They drew a lot more. And so just don't be afraid to think outside the box and think unconventionally. And so the last thing I want to leave you guys with is a poster series that IBM did. And it was just a completely new way that I had never thought of poster design, and that they turned posters into so much more than posters. So I will show. Nope. So it was a poster series called Smarter Cities, and it was all about how IBM can help make cities smarter. And so their posters were trying to articulate this big idea. And so they made a poster, and all they did was kind of like flip it in, and they made a bench out of the poster. Um, they also made a ramp to help people to turn stairs into a ramp, and they also made an awning of their poster and helped people escape from the rain when they forgot their umbrellas. So just don't forget those. Don't be afraid to have those big ideas and articulate those concepts in new and exciting ways. And I know you guys have big ideas, and I know you can all be great designers. So good luck.
Awesome, Katie. Thank you so much for taking time to share some of these key tips that I think are going to be really good for all of us to think about, not just the students, but I think even educators and anybody else who might someday come across this video. I think it's funny, and I'm going to keep this on the recording because I think it's so interesting that working with the teacher on this, one thing that I was supposed to tell you that I forgot to completely tell you was the emphasis on revision, 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 and you completely hammered that perfectly. So it's interesting whether you're in the classroom or whatever kind of job, occupation, or whatever hobby or thing you do. Uh, None of these designs came through just right from the start, as you talked about. I mean, even all the poster designs that you came up with, I just think of all the work that went into it in the end. Only kind of one makes it on, and
Mhm.
so I think that's such an important point for the students listening, because it's just not going to magically appear overnight. But the idea and the inspiration could quickly happen in a matter of seconds. But to deliver that to that message, I think is really really important piece. And I think the other piece that really stood out in that part is it's not about your artistic skill, but really the challenge is, can you sell your idea? Can you sell the message? And you've shared a plethora of ideas of ways to do that. So um, I thank you for your time, for taking time to talk with these kids.
Yeah.
So all right, let me